In our last video, we talked about the different ways that we stay places: camping, boondocking, mooch-docking, which is staying in people's driveways, essentially, or somewhere on their property. And that's what's great about our Class B RV is in the van, we can park in people's driveways overnight. Sometimes, though, we visit people that don't have driveways that we can park in, or you're not allowed to camp. And what's nice about our van in that case is we can just park in a regular parking space in a city lot.
So on our last trip, we first stayed with your brother, and then we went and stayed with my parents. Every March, they rent a place on Anna Maria Island in Florida on the Gulf side. They've actually been going there for years. My grandparents, my great grandparents, many aunts and uncles, cousins, like Anna Maria has been the place for our family for generations. So it's an awesome place to go. In this case, we wanted to visit my parents, but the condo that they're staying at has very limited parking, and the city ordinance says that there's no camping on the island. So it doesn't matter what size rig you have, or travel trailer or RV of any kind, there's no camping. But what's nice, as Ari said about our van, is that it fits into a regular parking spot. And in this particular case, they do allow overnight parking in a public parking spot. And so there's a couple of those spots right next to the condo that my parents rent. And so we were able to park there for the week and no questions asked.
Yeah, they are very strict about that too. And we were parked with the van. We weren't camping in it, but we still had somebody mention it to the police and wondered if we were camping overnight because we're somewhat stealth, but there's a lot of stuff on our van that makes it look like an RV. And so the cops did stop by and while we were there and talked to me about what we were doing, and they were fine with it. They have no problem with overnight parking. I think it was a little unusual because when they first showed up, we had, the back doors were open, the fan was on, and it's because, well, we couldn't stay in the van to camp overnight. We also couldn't take our cat Tigger into the condo. So we couldn't be in the van and he couldn't be inside. So he camped. He mooch-docked at the condo. So we had the fan going and the doors open. And so they showed up and they were like, what's going on here? Is somebody actually sleeping in the thing? So I went out and talked to them and they understood what we were doing. We obviously had to keep the airflow going for the cat and keep it cooled off in there. They were totally cool with that. It was not a problem. So that was good. But yeah, we were just in a regular parking space, which worked out really well for us.
Yeah, it was great because, again, we were working all week. And so we, stayed inside with my parents in the condo. And every morning we'd get up. I would go for a run on the beach. And then I'd get ready for work. And my parents would get ready to go down to the beach. And so they'd hang out at the beach all day while Ari and I stayed in the condo and worked. And then in the evening, we'd all get ready and go out to dinner or go for a walk on the beach or go get ice cream. And so it was just really nice. It was just another way that we could still be doing our regular jobs, but also visiting family at the same time.
Yeah, it was kind of like when you're able to work remotely, you work all day, but then when the workday is done, you're where you want to be. It's kind of like you flip a switch and you're on vacation mode, right? Especially when you're hanging out with your parents and like to go out to eat while we're visiting them. So we tried all kinds of different restaurants on the island and in the area, and so that was a lot of fun to do that. We got really lucky with weather. It was pretty nice while we were there, so
Gorgeous.
that was nice.
We're at the beach. We found the beach.
One of the nice things about being on Anna Maria Island is you get some great sunsets and you're able to see some beautiful views while you're there. And I do enjoy that. I'm not a big beach person personally, hanging out in the sand, but I do enjoy the sunsets and going for walks on the beach occasionally, that kind of a thing. We did get lucky with weather. It was beautiful while we were there. It made it a little bit warm at times. Actually, I mentioned our cat Tigger was staying in the van. We had to keep doors open and keep that fan going. But our briefcase solar, we have a Renogy 100-watt briefcase solar system, and it worked really well because I was able to set it out in the Florida sun all day long, hook it up to the batteries, and we weren't really doing much in the van. We had the fan going pretty high speed most of the time and some of the other electronics and things that were running in the van. But that Renogy system kept our batteries topped off with no problem. And so that was great to put it to use. And I'm glad we carry that around for those times when you really do need it. So if you're thinking about solar and you're not sure where to go with that yet, maybe think about a briefcase system. They're not that expensive. They're portable and you can kind of use them as you need them. So anyway, just a little side tip on that. But you, of course, are a beach person.
Yes, definitely a beach person. I've grown up at the beach, whether that was the Florida beaches or the Lake Michigan beaches, totally a beach girl. So anytime that I wasn't working, I was down at the beach. A couple times after work, I would go down there with my mom. or on the weekend I got to be out there, and we just love pulling up our chairs, like our beach chairs, right by the edge of the water, and just sitting there with our feet dangling in the water. You mentioned the gorgeous weather. The Gulf was actually decently warm, so I did get to go out and play in it for a little bit, and we didn't see a whole lot in the water on this trip. Sometimes there'll be sand dollars or some rays out there. We did see a few dolphins, and a few little fish. But the biggest thing that my mom and I have done for years since I was little is dig up and play with the coquinas. And if you don't know what they are, coquinas are basically a little creature living in a shell. And when they've abandoned their shell and it dries, it opens up into a little pretty butterfly shape. And their shells are just gorgeous colors. But they dig themselves down into the sand. And so if you kind of dig yourself and scoop up, all of a sudden you'll find these coquinas. And they have this little teeny foot, and they'll go right down into the sand. So we just like pulling them up and then watching them, and then the waves will come and they'll bury themselves down in. And we had a couple kids that we got to show them to this trip that were wandering around watching us and had never seen them before. And so it was really cool. We always like being able to show it off to other kids and people that have never really seen the coquinas, because they're usually buried so far in the sand you don't see them.
Well, and when they do show up, I mean, if the waves turn them over, or you're walking and you turn them up, if you don't know what you're looking for, you would think it's just shells. I mean, there's a ton of seashells on the shore, right? So that's what you see. And I had never seen them until you showed them to me, years ago now. But yeah, it just looks like shells have kind of rolled up on the beach. And if you stand there and stare at them long enough, you realize they're moving, and they dig and they drill their way right back down. It's kind of interesting to watch.
But that was our entertainment for the weekend, was digging up the coquinas.
What more do you need when you're on the beach?
I don't need much of anything. I just need some sun and some suntan lotion and a beach chair and a towel, and that'll pretty much make me happy.
If you're not crazy about the beach, there are other things to do. There is, near the area where we were staying, the Robinson Preserve, which is a huge nature preserve, all kinds of trails, and there's some towers you can climb, and there's wetlands there, so you can look for all kinds of different critters and birds and things to see. So that's a nice place to go. You can walk through there. People ride their bikes through there, so there's different things to do. So, and there's a number of those preserves around in that area of Florida, and I'm sure there are in other areas too. But keep that in mind too. If you just like to get out for a hike, there's usually some place that you can go, no matter where you're at, to get out and enjoy the outdoors.
What was really interesting, though, was that was the first week that we were really starting to see the COVID-19 sort of crisis across the United States, and things were starting to shut down, or people were starting to get leery, like some of the schools were closing. But in Florida, we weren't seeing that necessarily. So at least life on the island was going on as normal, although people were starting to take a few extra precautions of, like, being careful when you were opening doors and touching things. But it was just the first week, so things were starting to be a little weird, but not totally yet. And so we were still going on pretty much as life is normal, other than a few extra precautions of extra washing your hands and everything.
Yeah, and I don't think there was a restaurant we went to that didn't have hand sanitizer, either at the tables or somewhere nearby that was available. So we were starting to see that it was still at the point where it was, be better about personal hygiene, wash your hands more, use hand sanitizer. But social distancing hadn't really been enacted yet, and people were still kind of out and about doing their thing. So it was it was almost kind of a weird time, because you could tell something was happening and starting to happen, but especially on the island, it was almost like we commented we were in a little bubble. We'd watch some of the news of what's going on in other states, and I felt like we were in a bubble. But that has obviously changed over the past few weeks, and so now we're all on travel restrictions and waiting for things to get better so we can get out on the road again.
You mentioned how quickly things changed, and in terms of the COVID and the crisis and everything. And I think the biggest thing that we saw was that we actually were at Disney World that week. We took a day during the week and went over to Disney for a special after hours event that they were having, that we bought tickets to, a long time ago. And again, because that was still sort of when everything was happening, I don't think anybody thought twice of it. Yeah, we might have been using hand sanitizer a little bit more, but I mean, we were packed in with thousands of people at Disney watching a fireworks show and going on rides and not really thinking much about it. And, that was early middle of the week. And by not even a week later, Disney was shut down. I mean, it happened overnight, really, in terms of what we were seeing. And so we were one of the last, not few, but few people that actually were at Disney before Disney shut down. And I think that's just really crazy to me, to think that here we were having such a great time going on these rides, enjoying this special after hours event, where there were very few people in the park because of the party. And less than a week later, it was closed. And so now we've been watching that. And so I think to me that's been one of the strangest juxtapositions of this whole thing, was how we were part of that and then suddenly it was closed.
It is a bit surreal because we were at an after hours event. And so when the park shut down at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., whenever we finally got booted out of there, we were one of the last people out of the park because your mom went with us and you and your mom are crazy about Disney. So we stayed as long as possible. And it was kind of a strange sensation to be walking out of Disney and be one of the last people out. And it was really quiet on the main street. And it was kind of, everything had died down and it was super quiet. And now you look at the pictures of Disney, that's kind of what's there now. It's a little eerie. So it was surreal to kind of be there and see it it was almost like it closed behind us, right? And that's kind of how it felt. It was unusual. We kind of joked about it, that to me, some of the longer lines that we saw at Disney on that trip were people in the bathroom because they were washing their hands more and doing it well. And so that was kind of interesting to see that. There were hand sanitizers everywhere.
I just hope that continues. You never think about it. I mean, Disney probably is one of the germiest places on earth, not only the happiest, but the germiest, just because you're touching everything, right? The rides, the pull downs. So hopefully that trend does continue long term, that people are washing their hands more.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to pick up your slogan, the germiest place on earth. But when you think about it, everybody should have been washing their hands and using hand sanitizer more anyway. But yeah, it was a good time there. It was an interesting time to be at Disney at night anyway. There was fewer people there. We got to go on some of the iconic rides, the Dumbo and the Teacup, and there weren't really any lines or really long lines for that. So it was fun to do that.
Yeah, I do highly recommend those parties, whether it's the after hours party, the Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party, or the Very Merry Christmas party. Anytime that you can get into the park after hours when there are fewer people. We've done this a couple times. It's well worth it. So when Disney does finally reopen and you want to get down there, I do recommend booking those kind of tickets, because it does allow you to get on those rides without like the 3-hour long waits. And there's always kids there, but not as many of them. So you can get on the little kid rides as an adult without having to wait for them.
And without as many kids judging you because you're taking their seat on Dumbo, right? But hey, it's fun. You might as well enjoy it while you're there.
As soon as the restrictions are lifted, keep on trekking.
And we'll see you out there.